So we're on log hunting, catching all of the bad things, telling the story with all of the logs that we actually have been collecting. So let's take an outline of what we're going to be talking about. This one's going to be a pretty short lecture. We're going to talk about indicators of compromise. What are they? What do they look like? How do we find them? How do we detect attacks? And this really be subcategories of network detections, host detections, and application detections. So essentially different forms of logs that we're going to be looking at. So first, indicators of compromise. We talked about this earlier, what an indicator of compromise is, and it's really the evidence left behind of an attack. And the example I always use is, you come into your home and you see the glass is broken on the inside and things are missing from the safe, right? There's now evidence that someone's been inside. So the examples that we generally have are logs, right? Logs are going to be the biggest indicator of compromise and your best friend, and kind of what we're going to go through most of the time. But in addition to logs, or really, we can talk about what logs are, right? Logs are just requests are made, any errors that happen, any actions that are taken, right? If I was like a coffee maker and I had logs, it would be like, every time I had to fill up with water, every coffee that was being made, right? Or, when something broke, right? And then maybe with a timestamp on each one of those things. But you could think most devices that are connected to the network are going to generate logs for you, or at least there'll be options for generating the logs. And what are those logs always going to be? They're going to be some timestamp and some action that was taken. So just at a high level, this is what we're always going to be looking at. In addition to logs, the other IOC that we have to be aware of are the artifacts that our adversaries are going to leave behind, right? So when we were in PWK, we left artifacts all over the place. Any new files that we made, anytime we brought over our tools, anytime we made new user accounts, right? All of those things were the artifacts that we leave behind of our intrusion. So here we have some of just examples, right? User accounts that end up being created, any services that we start running, any of the machines that we end up taking over. And then finally, another indicator of compromise are the metrics. And this one is really the context or understanding your organization, right? It's kind of out there now, but once you're working for an organization, you're going to have an idea of what normal looks like for that organization. And anything abnormal is going to be something interesting for you to want to check out. So things like service degradation, right? Things broke, right? That's something that I might want to check out. Anytime there's strange activity, right? Way more requests than usual happening at some time, right? Activity upticks, things are breaking more often than usual, right? Anytime something abnormal is happening, it's potentially an indicator of compromise. So how do we actually detect these kinds of attacks, right? How do you know when you've been breached? So really the biggest things are having alerts set up. So something triggers, perhaps our particular log triggers an alert, right? You get an email that something happened. Now you got to go check it out. Right? Some kind of anomaly occurred, right? There's services that have gone down. All of these things you should be thinking are, as an event, potentially an attack, something we need to consider. So the cycle of being a novice blue teamer is you get a report and you investigate it. And so this idea being is once you get this report, you need to create a hypothesis. Why did this happen? And there's not really any wrong answers here, right? It's important to be creative. Right. I think William had an example before, someone logging into their bank account in New York and then someone logging in, a few hours later in Singapore, right? Hypothesis is someone maybe stole those credentials and logged into this account. So now we need to look for evidence of that actually happening. All right. Another hypothesis might be this person is using their VPN and connecting through Singapore, through some other location, right? So what would be the evidence of that? Right? You're going to generate these hypotheses, and then look for the evidence that would support them. Right? Additionally, you're going to conclude with whatever reasoning and supporting evidence you have for your hypothesis, right? Taking it all the way back to when we were looking at PCAPs, and I make you answer those questions with reasoning and supporting evidence, right? Like same idea here for as you're detecting attacks. And really, as we were looking through the PCAPs, we were detecting attacks. We were doing this already, right? A PCAP is just a type of log. It's network traffic, right? We're just going to be doing the same thing now, with different kinds of logs. So we have network detections, right? Where and what logs are we actually collecting? So who can give me an example of some devices that would be collecting network logs? What devices do we have on the network that would be collecting network logs?
Would that be firewalls?
Yeah, for sure. We got firewalls on the network. They'll definitely produce some logs. What else we got on there? I can think of, I think, one or two more.
Intrusion prevention systems?
Yeah, if you got your intrusion prevention system on the network, that way that won't exactly produce logs, right? That will look through those logs and then maybe tell you if there's something to detect or some kind of intrusion, but it won't actually generate logs for you. What's the device you all have in your homes?
Routers?
Yeah, right. Routers are going to be generating logs for you. Let's go through what do I have here. So we got routers, right? These are things you're going to want to pay attention to see what's going on your network. You got scanners, network taps, right? Anything that's going to collect data for you, like PCAPs, so you can analyze them. Firewalls, right? All of these things are devices that are going to be on the network that are going to be collecting logs for you. It's going to be your job to say, hey, one, did we configure these things so that we actually are logging, and are we logging the things that are important? But at the network level, these are the things that should be coming into your mind, right? Routers, your scanners, if you have network taps to actually generate and collect PCAPs, any firewalls. You want to make sure all of these things are logging so that you can detect any intrusions. Where are the alerts coming from? So yeah, Peter, why don't you tell me, where are the alerts coming from?
The IPS or IBS.
Yeah, so Peter got the other end of it here, right? From our network defenses. So your network intrusion detection systems, your snort, right? All these snort rules. These are where the alerts are coming from, right? So you have to set those alerts to monitor either the traffic or monitor the router, such that when something happens, it sends you an alert. Kind of like how I wrote that Python script that checks to see if there's a time for me to get married, right? It's going to send me an alert every day. Right, same idea here, right? It just looks at some data and will alert you. Cool. So we have types of network issues and attacks. These are just going to run through some examples here. Strong recommendation, again, these are linked and kind of mapped to the MITRE ATT&CK framework, but these are the things you're going to be looking for on the network level and things you're going to want to look through those logs to detect, right? So you're going to look through your router logs and your PCAPs to see, hey, am I being scanned? Right? You're going to know, what does a scan look like? You guys have run your own Nmap scans, right? Run it with Wireshark open, and you'll see exactly what a scan looks like, right? Is it a denial of service attack? What do denial of service attacks going to look like? Is it a rogue device? Someone plugs something into your network and it's just listening for other things, maybe sending out, maybe it's doing some beaconing, right? Reaching out to somewhere else. You're going to be using your network logs to detect any of these things happening, right? And what do we do when we find these things happening? Well, we have certain tools that will identify and prioritize which alerts you should be looking at. There is a thing, if you Google, it's called alert fatigue, where novice security professionals end up getting constant alerts and alerts and alerts. And you're always on edge where it's like, well, is this an attack or is this not? Well, you have certain tools that'll help you prioritize, because not everything is a real threat, even if you have to necessarily treat them like they are. At this level, you have IPS, right? Block and drop traffic. You have third-party providers. You can set up a sinkhole for DOS traffic, right? So if all this DOS traffic is coming through, you just redirect it to some sinkhole to deal with it. And again, these are just examples of what you can do once you've detected network-style attacks. You're going to look at your network maps to identify what's working and what's not working, and really just keep focus on CIA, right? Like, is this issue that's happening, is it even a security issue? Or is it just someone that, forgot their password and they're trying to log in a few times, right? Like, is this actually a security issue, or is this just an IT issue, something that I could pass on to a different team that's not exactly related to me in security? Okay. At the host level, so we're going down now. At the host level, we're talking individual machines, workstations, laptops, mobile devices and stuff, right? So where, again, and what logs are we collecting at this level? At this level, you have things like Windows syslog, right? Everything that's on the host. Any monitoring tools like PS, right? On Windows, you have sysinternals and perfmon, right? On Linux, all of these things, right? Take a look at what processes are running, right? Have logs for these things. Where are the alerts coming from? They're going to be coming from the same places, right? Set up some logging tools to detect, are things going wrong with my host? And we could bring this back to the attack framework as well. I'm pretty sure you could look under host detection and see what you should be logging, so that you can take a look at these particular attacks to detect particular attacks, like DLL hijacking. Okay. Other things you'll have on the host are antivirus, right? Authentication, access logs, right? All of those things that you were looking at when you were a red teamer and you get on a box and you're like, hey, what services are running all these things, right? Those are the logs that you're going to want to have as a blue teamer as well. Pay attention to. Okay. Then one level down, we have the applications, the individual applications. So here, again, the same question: where and what logs are we collecting? Service statuses, failures, things are broken or not working, right? What type of events are we supposed to catch and pay attention to? Anything that looks weird, right? Things that are not following standard procedures. These are the things that should alert us and make us interested, right? Anytime new accounts get generated, right? We should pipe all new accounts that get generated, and they should be checked, right? Because one of the things that the adversaries will do to maintain persistence is generate new accounts that they can just log into those, right? Unexpected output. If you have some application, you put something in and it's acting kind of weird, right? That's potentially a security event. Something that you should be aware of and analyze and detect. This one, big star on it, right? Any kind of unexpected outbound communication. If you have an application that is pinging out or really, like, this should shout out to you, right? Unexpected outbound communications on an application should really shout out and be something that's like, well, why is this thing doing this? Why is this application calling out someone outside, right? Like, this is a huge red flag for you. Service interruptions, right? Oftentimes we'll detect intruders because they break something, right? I'm sure you guys have had the experience in PWK where you maybe break a particular service that's running on that machine as you try and do your privilege escalation or something like that, and you end up having to restart or revert the machine, right? This happens in the real world too, as adversaries are inside the network and maybe they're trying to do some lateral movement or escalate their privileges, and they end up breaking something. And oftentimes maybe the blue teamers don't realize, they're like, huh, that's weird, something broke. They turn it off and turn it back on again and say, okay, my work here is done, everything is working. But they don't realize that somebody is inside here. So anytime there's service interruptions, that may be an indicator of compromise. That may be a security event and something that's worth looking into. Memory overflows. The book explicitly mentions these, and something to be aware of. I'm pretty sure, I forget exactly on what page, but it has a nice synopsis of memory overflows. I'll add that in. Okay. So the summary of all of these logs that we've been looking at, right? What are indicators of compromise? You guys now should have a great answer for this. You should be able to describe what an indicator of compromise is and give me specific examples of indicators of compromise, both like physical real world ones and digital cybersecurity ones. So if someone asks you, hey, what are some indicators of compromise to look for in an interview, right? You have that answer. You have answers for how do you detect and deal with attacks, right? Essentially logs and looking for anomalous behavior. And then finally, as we're looking through here, you can look at logs on the network level. So your PCAPs, your firewalls, your routers, and standard traffic, what that looks like. You have at the host level, right? Your syslogs, right? Any processes and stuff like that happening on the host. And finally, at the application level, you have logs here for things to look out for anytime applications are pinging outbound when they shouldn't be, or putting unexpected output, right? Here are the things you're going to want to look for under those logs. So I kind of went through this kind of quickly. Do we have any questions on log hunting? Cool. In that case, let's stop share, stop recording.